I cannot think of any need in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection. Sigmund Freud. This is Dadography, a podcast with stories and insights on fatherhood from dads around the globe, dedicated to providing you with the tools and tips to become a better dad. I'm your host, Corey Wood. Mervyn Fernandes, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on, man.
Hey, Corey, it's a pleasure to be on the show. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, definitely. So, as our audience would like to know, give us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, man.
I'm 36 years old from India. I was born and raised in Bhavnagar, but now I'm based in Baroda. I'm married since 9 years, and I have a daughter. She's 6 years, and her name is Myra Fernandez. I am a businessman. I have an outsourcing as well as international trading and consulting company. So that's about me.
Well, that's about you, but that's quite a bit, Mervyn. You've got your hands in business around the globe, married, raising a daughter. So you're from a place you said Bhavnagar. That's a fairly small rural village, if I've done my research correctly. Is that correct?
Yes, in comparison to India, like it's second most populated country in the world. Bhavnagar is a quite remote place. The population is around about almost 2 million people, but yet we call it a small place.
That's hilarious. Yeah, man, that is something. And so you presently live in Baroda, is that correct?
Yes, I live in Baroda. It's 4.5 hours from Bhavnagar, so it's not too far.
Okay, so to give our audience a little bit of context, when you say Bhavnagar, you're essentially speaking of, in the context of India, at least, a small town or a small place, and you're in Baroda. Is that small as well, or is it more metropolitan?
Baroda is metropolitan. It's almost double the size of Bhavnagar, area-wise as well as the population. It is considered to be the education hub of the Western India. In fact, it has one of the oldest universities of India. It's a metropolitan cities. A lot of students from out of Gujarat or from Baroda have come to this place, and they have somehow settled down. And it's a mix of a lot of different people all around India that stay in Baroda.
You know, Mervyn, when I think of India, I think really cultural from my experience and the times that I visited there and lived there for a brief period. I think deep spiritual values. I think about how the fact that each state has, different languages and different cultures. As I traveled India, it almost felt as though I was going from different country to different country, and perhaps because it's so old. So when I think of it in terms of, say, fatherhood, I imagine that just the concept of fatherhood could be very different from place to place. So I'd like, at least for our listeners, to know that when we speak of Baroda and Bhavnagar, we're specifically speaking about Northwest India, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Now, I know marriage is a big thing in India. You two have a child. You said you've been married for 9 years. Immediately, what comes to my mind is how fathers usually take the role, in many cases, of even arranging their children's wedding. Was your wedding arranged, Mervyn?
No, it wasn't. My wife is basically from a Hindu family, and I am from a Christian family. So I don't know if you've heard about it, but in India, it's the intercaste marriages are really difficult, and it was really difficult for us to convince our parents because of the culture. It's an opposite culture of the Hindus. They are really religious. They have their spiritual concepts and other stuff. But my marriage was initially not arranged. I actually had to get married in the court, the legal ways, and then actually had to convince both of the parents, like from my parents and her parents, to convince that we are in love and that we wanted to get married. And then the traditional Indian wedding took place, but we had to wait like for 1 year before we could convince our parents.
So let me see if I'm understanding this right. It sounds to me, and I'm not pointing the finger, Mervyn, but it sounds to me like you guys snuck off and got married, and then came back and said, "All right, we're married, so you have to deal with it." Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, it is. We had to plan out the entire getting married thingy like a movie, like an Indian movie. I had to snuff out. We had to run away and go to a place and then call our parents that, look, we've got married and my wife is 21, so I can legally marry her. If you've seen a lot of Indian movies, we had to go through a lot of acting as well as emotional talks before we could come back and get it settled out.
Hmm. That brings me to something though. I mean, as you talk about the challenges that you guys face in getting married, obviously I can't help but think about your father. Help me to understand him. Give me a glimpse of your dad, your upbringing with your dad.
Well, my dad came from a really big family. They had 8 brothers and 2 sisters, so it was a big family. My dad basically was a teacher as well as he was into his own private business. But my dad was like a typical Indian father, a lot of family values, was really religious, like going to the church on Sundays, having me read, as well as becoming the altar boy. But he was really open for us, like really open to us. He considered us more like as we grew up. He wanted us to grow up like friends, along with the values. He wanted us to be open and, take every step as it comes. He was really supportive, and he actually wanted us to do what we wanted to do, but in a way that we remember that we are at the end of the day coming home, and we are answerable to him. So he was strict with disciplines. He had a really good background in studies, so he wanted us to study as well and do well. So he came up with a very strict background, but like I said, he was really friendly. He wanted us to be good in the sports, good in the studies, but he wanted us to grow up like a man should, take up the responsibilities and mold yourself into the situation as it comes.
You know, in my observation, right? Like Indian fathers tend to be highly respected. Even as you speak about your dad, I can hear, his influence at a young age over you. And I'm assuming you must have a sibling because you say us. But let me ask you this. How, in your opinion, obviously, how is it that Indian fathers accumulate such respect? And let me give you an example. I remember once in India, I had to go to a Western Union office to do an international transaction. And while there, I was, having a conversation with the gentleman that was assisting me. Very different from, I don't know, other Western Union offices. It was like basically an office in the front of his house. And we're sitting down and we're talking. And somehow or another, the conversation leaned toward marriage and engagement and those sort of things. And he was 30 plus years old. And the thing that he said that struck me as odd was that he wasn't married and he was waiting for his father to give him the approval. That struck me as odd because I'd never heard of such a thing for a 30 plus year old man waiting for his fathers to give an approval. So I guess my question to you is how does that type of respect, that type of admiration, humility in front of fathers come into play? How do you think the culture in Indian fathers do that?
Well, to be honest, what I feel is that it's the upbringing. When we are kids, since we are brought up in this cultural circle, we're starting from the school, the friends, everything. It's all about family values and the respect. There is a Sanskrit word. It goes like Pitru Deva Bhava. And again, it's Matru Deva Bhava. So it's Pitru Deva Bhava means to consider father as God, and Matru Devo Bhava is like consider your mother as goddess. So from when we are brought up, we are taught that our parents are the circle. They are the inner circle and the center of our universe. Anything they do is for the betterment of us. They go through the pain, they go through the troubles, they protect us, they guide us. It's once they are married and once they have the kids, typically the fathers, at the end of the day, they compromise everything. They give out everything. Whatever is left, they forget about their own lifestyle. They forget about their own hobbies. Whatever brings them happiness is secondary. What they consider is, how am I going to take care of my children? What is their future? What is the best for them? So this is how we are taught. This is how they were taught. And this is the typical, Indian culture, wherein parents and typically fathers are considered to be God, and whatever you do to them, it comes to you, it reflects to you. So that's why in every aspect of our life, starting from when we are born up till when they pass over, we make sure that they are the gods and we treat them as gods.
It's a very interesting, concept that you're sharing, Mervyn, because what I'm really hearing is a mutual sacrifice. You mentioned they give up in many cases their hobbies, their dreams, and then the children in turn are looking at their father figures, to use your term, as a god. And so there's this mutual sacrifice that I imagine that kind of generates or creates this respect. That's interesting. It sounds like without question that Indian fathers make decisions for their children. Did your dad make any major decisions for you? Obviously, I know marriage wasn't one of them, but are there any examples where he did make some major decisions for you?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff. I mean, he wanted me to become a cricketer. It's a big sports, a big game in India. Every parent wants their son to become a cricketer and play cricket for India, represent India. My dad wanted me to do that. Uh, but I couldn't, because I wanted to play soccer, So he said, okay, give it up. And I remember this situation when there was an option of me not clearing the studies, that particular, I think I was in 11th standard, 11th class. And I told my father, that dad, either I can't, I have to play this. I have to play this. It's for my national team. And I remember he taking the decision. He came to my school and he told my principal that, my son is meant to play, So I take the responsibility and it's my decision that my son is not going to give the examination. If he flunks, that's fine. But if he's doing something that he likes, I'm backing him up, For me, that was the biggest. I will never forget when my dad stood by me. He put his hand on my shoulder and he told me that if you don't want to give the exam, that's fine. But I'll come to the school and this is my decision that my son will do and he'll play, and education can be done wherever he wants to.
That's a huge amount of support that he showed you. It makes me understand what you said earlier about, though he was a disciplinarian and strict, he also made the effort to befriend you and be friendly towards you. I think that's a fantastic example. Have you seen a major shift in fatherhood throughout India from, your childhood to now? I mean, obviously we know that there's a whole bunch of tradition and culture that kind of pushes the flow of parenting, but have you seen major changes over the years?
Yes, indeed. For example, when I was a kid and from my upbringing, we were not exposed to the Western culture, although the Western culture, let me say, it intrigued us. We always saw the other countries, the way they live the life, and it was like a fascination. We never thought, it's going to be a transition in our lives. But now, in the sense, let's say in the last decade or so, the last 10, 12 years, it's been a huge transition. It's changing, not in the fact of the cultures, but the way that I was raised and the way that I'm raising my daughter, it's a huge transition because now people are getting exposed. People are getting exposed through, like, my daughter is getting exposed to internet, the videos, and the friends and the school are getting more sophisticated. You cannot compare what I had, the education that I had in the same year as my daughter. And it was just going to the school, learning the books and whatever the books taught us and what our parents taught us, the surroundings taught us was good for us. But now that it has changed, everything is a new thing for them. And it's a transition that I'm noticing. It's a huge transition. Along with the kids, the parents also are adjusting, and it's changing a lot.
Hey guys, this is Corey, host of the Dadography podcast. This episode is sponsored by and dedicated to you. Thanks for all your feedback and support. I mean that. However, if this is your first time tuning in, please be sure to subscribe And if you've done that already and you're getting some value from our interviews with dads from around the globe, please share. Teamwork makes a dream work. Now back to the show. You know, you mentioned your education and your daughter's education, shifting to Maya just a little bit. From what I've seen and heard, a lot of times Indian families begin what they call tuitions or tutoring as early as 3 years old. Is that something that you implemented with your daughter?
Yes, it's not basically tuitions, even though the parents do send their children to tuitions, because the standard of education in India is, ahead of most of the countries that I have been to and I've talked to, because what the students or a 3 year or 4 year will be studying in Indian school will be, on comparison, will be taught to the students in other countries in the later period. So in the basis of tuitions, yes, we do, but not for the studies. What we send them is for brain development. It's a concept that teaches. Let's say she started going for tuitions at like 4 years. She has been doing since 2 years. So there is a tuition for drawing, arts and culture. There's a tuition for music, and then there is the tuition for brain development. It's basically they learn about the science, if the languages. So it's from 3-4 years now they are learning a lot of stuff that we never imagined we would.
So the concept with early tutoring or tuitions is not just get them to learn the alphabet or get them to learn a specific course, but you say brain development. Is that more of an emphasis on creating a love or an affinity for learning and how to learn, or is there something specific that you guys are looking for in the brain development tuitions?
So basically, the brain development is like not using the conventional ways of learning something. If they detect a child is attracted or she has an hobby or she is actually turning towards something, for example, Myra, my daughter, she loves to talk. She loves to sing. So what they do is they pick up a child's habit and then they evolve that habit in a way that it's nurtured in a more professional way, wherein she can speak out, she can be in an environment that she can grow the whatever habit she has or whatever she wants to become or what she interests her. This brain development will make sure that they do it in a way that she is not forced to learn that or she is not burdened to learn that, but in a happier way or in a way where she likes, getting into more details of this stuff. So it's like a pre-programmed planning for all students of different criteria, but it definitely helps what she loves, doing it in the way that she would love to do, apart not from us, like we forcing her to do something.
That's very different from educational approaches that I've seen in the West. I think generally it is determined that this is the method that one learns, and hence they're pushed forth down that path. So, for example, there's just like in India, there's school, there's elementary school, there's middle school, and then high school, and then on to college. But I don't. You said something earlier about pre-planning. I don't think education for Western fathers or mothers for that matter is planned as much in the early years. Perhaps when a child reaches, 11th or 12th grade, parents will then sit down and kind of help that child develop a plan so that they can determine what course or major they'd like to take in university. But not at such a young age. Not at such a young age is that much thought given to. Obviously there are always exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, that much thought isn't given to the education of a child. I applaud you for that. Let me ask you, so your daughter is 6 years old. What's the best memory of fatherhood to date, my man?
It's going to be hard to pick because every day is is a memory. Because I'll be very honest. When we were planning a baby with me and my wife, we wanted a daughter. Like a father, I was always fascinated, and I always wanted a daughter. But in India, you cannot find out if it's a daughter or a son. It's like a wait and watch. When it happens, you know that, oh, it's a baby or it's a daughter.
I'm sorry.
So I
I have to interject here for the sake of my own curiosity, and I'm assuming as well as the listeners. So By far and large, they don't do the sonograms and tell you in advance what the child is in India.
That's correct. That's illegal. Gender revelation, the doctors and the testing centers are prohibited. Again, that is because of the background and the culture that we have. Like in India, in small villages and in our past, in a lot of religions, parents prefer to have guys, like the boy child in their family, because they feel that the boy will grow, take care of the parents, bring in the wife. If you have heard, we had the dowry system, when if a girl wants to marry a guy, the family has to pay the guy's family. It's like a dowry. It's not practical anymore. It still happens in small places in India, but the government took the decision that gender revelation before from any laboratory is prohibited. So you cannot pre-decide if it's going to be the daughter or a son. It's whatever happens, it happens. Coming back to your question about the greatest memory, and I still remember, I told her the first time I took her to the school, and the entire road I was telling her, that this is the first day, it's okay if you cry. I'm going to sit outside and just watch you, and I'm going to wait for a couple of hours. And I still remember she telling me, Dad, don't worry, I'm a 3-year-old, I'm not going to cry. Maybe you cried, but I'm not going to cry. And she did not. And then when she came out, and I was looking, and I had tears in my eye that, she's really strong. So that is the best memory that I recall.
For her to tell you that at 3.5, it says something about the benefit of the brain development class. Wow, that's something, man. What are some of the things that differ from the way you were fathered and the way that you find yourself fathering Maya?
Well, let's start from the way I was, and then I'll just compare. The way
Okay.
we were raised. Like I said, we were raised in this small place called Bhavnagar, and we were not exposed to a lot of stuff. Apart from me being a Christian, and I have a Hindu and Muslim friends, my my cultural diversity of me being indulged with people was pretty limited. That's if I go to school and I play outside, that's about it. Apart from that, I was just raised in a typical 80s and 90s Indian kid, who studies, who is fascinated with sports. What we pursue of our life is to finish schooling, then do college. And as soon as the college is done, we have to pick up a job, because by the time we finish school, parents then take it as a responsibility. That's it, that's it. Our role is done. Now you need to take care of us. So that's how I was raised, in phases like school, colleges, maybe some sports, some musical events, and like a cultural thing, because we had a lot of festivals in India because I have a lot of Hindu friends and Muslim friends. So that was it. And when it comes to my daughter, my wife is an Hindu, and when I was raised in a single house community. It was small row houses or small houses. Now I stay in a big apartment. We have like 50 houses in just one apartment, And I am a Christian. My wife is a Hindu. Her parents are typical Hindu religious people, let's say my cultural habits are biased towards Christianity, but she is like a open book. Like she is baptized, she's baptized to be a Christian, but she can say all the Christian prayers. She can also say all Hindu prayers. She knows all the Christian festivals and all the big days in our calendar, but she also knows the names and the festivals of the Hindu calendar. So this is something really different. She knows, like when she goes to her mother's side, she knows that she needs to touch the feet of the grandparents, and they don't go to the church. But when she goes to my family, she knows that we have to go to the church on Sundays. So it's a vast difference. Now she can order food online, which I never did. It was just make your own food and eat it, like it's family food. But now at 9 o'clock, if she's hungry, she's like, Dad, can we like order something online? So a lot of things have changed. She's getting exposed to a lot of stuff. And at this age, she has learned more things that I would have actually learned by the 10th grade, Some words that she speaks in English, I don't remember me learning those words up till I was like 6th, 7th class, And now she speaks them because she watches TV, Netflix. She knows what is Netflix. She knows what is Amazon Prime. She knows my passwords, like, I know your password. Can you pay the money. Like, I know your password. So you see the vast difference. I was from a typical, the 90s, 80s children. But again, India was still in the 70s when you're talking about the 90s. But now she's upgraded with the latest in the world.
That's a pretty vast difference. I guess it also reiterates the fact that the world was once a globe, and now it's becoming more and more of a village, and that we're all more interlinked and intertwined together. And so it's probably a good thing that kids are getting more exposure to culture and different thoughts. You emphasized and kind of explained that your wife is of a Hindu background, you of a Christian background. Have you faced any challenges? I mean, we know we had some challenges even getting the marriage to be accepted by your family and her family. But what about since you've been married? Or have there been any challenges that you guys have faced?
Yes, I have. I mean, the challenges never cease to come, because the biggest challenge that I face overall is being a Christian. Again, we Christians are considered minorities in India. Hindus are the topmost religion. So there was a time when we got married. Most of her relatives did not attend the marriage. They did not want to attend the marriage because she got married to a Christian. And the overall concept of a Christian getting married to a Hindu, it's such a big hassle or hurdle for us in a lot of instances, and we do face a lot of problem. But the best part is that her parents understand the way we are. She herself is ready to take up the challenge, because at the end of the day she knows that a person is judged by the deeds, not by the religion. We always try and use family to get the solution out. We consult our family. I stay in a joint family. I stay with my mother. I stay with my brother. So we do talk it out, and most of the time it works out.
You said something there. I'd like to try to understand that conceptually for your daughter. So you said that you stay with your brother and your mother. So are we talking about the nuclear family all living in under one roof?
Yes, that's the best part of India. We love socializing, and it's more like a tradition. We, like, a brother always stays with a brother.
Okay.
It's like a family. We do not let our parents go. Be whatever happens, the parents always stay with us. If I move to some other place, my mother or my father will move with us. My father passed away 10 years back, but when I moved to Baroda, as soon as my father passed away, I had my mother come and stay with us because I didn't want her to stay alone. And that's how we are. We like to stay in a family, and it's our responsibility that we make sure that if I am the elder son, I'll make sure that I take care of the parents. I make sure that my younger brother gets married, and my younger brother sees the same way. He's typically the part of the family. He shares the responsibility, and at the end of the day, we make sure that whatever our parents have done for us, whatever we do in our life, it's not going to match whatever they've done to us. So we make sure that we keep on doing the best we can, and stay as a family once and forever.
What's been your most challenging aspect of being a dad? I mean, your daughter's only 6. I mean, I don't want to assume that you've had challenges that fathers have had that have teenagers or young women, but 6 years old, I'm assuming that there have been some challenges in being a dad. What are some things that you have faced as a dad and raising Maya thus far?
The major challenge that I face is comparing the upbringing of myself. I came from a very middle class family background,
Okay.
and when I planned a daughter, and luckily God blessed us with a daughter, I had a vision. I had a plan that I'll give her the best happiness. We do not want any other kid because I want her to be the boy and the girl in just one body. We treat her like a son, and we love her like a daughter. It's That's what I've thought. But the biggest challenge I feel is giving her the best we can. I'm sending her to the best school that I know of. I'm making sure that she gets the access to the best toys or the games and the culture, as well as the tuitions, making sure the habits, the hobbies are fulfilled. But at the end of the day, like I said, like an Indian father, for me, I don't know what's enough. I don't know where do I stop. Okay, this is enough for my daughter's upbringing. For every year, I think, okay, this is the target. I have to make sure that I save for her wedding. I make sure that I save for her education. I make sure that after education and after she gets married, I have enough that, in future, if she has anything, she doesn't have to hesitate to go anywhere else, she just comes to me. So for me, I think the biggest challenge every year, as of now, is to come up to a figure or a sustainable plan for us to give her the best.
Understand. I think that's what we might refer to as a healthy problem, Mervyn. Trying to give her the best. That's not a bad thing at all. Definitely. Well,
Yeah,
let me ask you this. Would you say that culture plays a huge role in your fathering? I mean, I know that things have changed, but is the Indian culture itself still somewhat integrated into the way that you father?
absolutely. It has, it will, and I think it will be always there, the culture, because it's an integral part of the family wherever she goes, even the school. If she goes to the school, she has the cultural days, she has those music programs. She's taught everything about the culture that we have in India as well as the Western culture. So it's going to be an integral part. I think it's going to be, for a matter of fact, every decision I take daily, let's say daily, like where she goes, she plays with the friends, everything. As a father, I think I realize that a culture has a big part to play. Like, I'll give you a very basic example. Like, when she was growing up, she used to eat food alone in her bedroom. Like in Indian culture, we have to have all the three meals together. We have
Okay.
to have the prayers together. If we go to the church, it has to be together.
And so when she would go to the room and eat by herself, you put a stop to that and made sure that she ate with the family.
Yes, we did make sure that she eats with the family, as well as the prayers together with the family. All the religion, all the festivals, it is with the family, whether it's an Hindu festival or a Christian festival. It's a family thing that she has to. And she dresses up, she dresses up if it's like a Diwali, she'll burst up the crackers. If it's a Christmas, she'll get ready and wait for the Santa. So it's like a big cultural, if you say, it's like
When you say bust the crackers, what do you mean? That's a foreign phrase to me.
it's Diwali is a Hindu festival. It
Mhm.
is the biggest Hindu festival.
Okay.
So basically, Diwali is when Ram, Lord Rama, defeated the evil Ravana, and he came
Okay.
back to Ayodhya. So
Hmm.
that is a victory of lightness over darkness. So what
Oh,
the Indian people do is they light the lanterns in their balconies and their home,
hmm.
and they bust crackers. So it's like a festival. Everybody, the
So
streets are
you're
lighted
speaking
up.
about firecrackers, letting off fireworks.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So
Well, Mervyn, I can't tell you how grateful I am for you spending this time with me and the listeners today. Before we close, I want to share with you a final thought from a Indian editor and writer, and give me your thoughts on this. And she writes, in my personal experience and observation of those around me, Indian fathers differ from the rest of the world in the simple fact that though they appear to be all rough and tough on the outside, presenting a macho image to their children, often going to the extent of pretending they don't even care, fathers are usually the most emotional of the parents. Would you agree with that? Yes or no? Why or why not?
absolutely, I would agree on that any given day. Like there is no better way to say this, because I feel that every day. Like, I have what I wanted. I wanted a daughter. I have a daughter. I want to raise her in a way that she is independent, strong, in a way that she can make her decisions. And one day when she grows up, she can do whatever she wants. But at the end of the day, I'll be always thinking, okay, what's going on? Is she at the school? Is she at the home? Is she at the tuition? She's coming back. Did she sleep? you know
Hmm.
so no matter how rough and tough I act against her or towards her, or make her have an impression that I'm a tough dad, but at the end of the day, I'm like a candle. Once you light me up, I'm going to melt like anything.
Well, hey, listen, before we go, I know I said that was the last question, but I think I would do the audience a huge injustice if I did not ask this and maybe with a follow up question on it. So obviously, we know culture plays a huge role. We know that your wife and yourself had a situation in your marriage where you eloped, and then due to different religious beliefs had to slowly present it to the family. Traditionally, we also talked about how a lot of Indian marriages are arranged. You are a father, you have a daughter. Do you think that when the time comes, and we've got a ways yet, she's only 6, but we're just trying to get a glimpse of fatherhood from an Indian perspective, do you think that you would ever consider arranging her a marriage, or would you just tell her, hey, go find who you want? Or would it be a point of conversation? Would you be involved to any extent? Or, help us out, man. Help us understand.
I would actually ask her to get, find someone responsible who is doing good. At the end of the day, she is going to live her life with that person. I would always give her the freedom to find someone she would, because my wife told her parents when we got married, she just told her one thing. She did not tell them I'm Christian, I'm rich, or poor, or black or white. She just told her mother that, I I am marrying this guy because he is same like the way you see your husband, like her parents. Her mother sees the husband as a grown up, as an individual, intellectual person who is doing well. I
Right.
want her to do the same. If she finds someone who is doing well, who is going to take care of her, then I guess she can make her own decision. And I'll make sure that it's the best wedding. And I'll make sure that I do some discussions, but I'll make sure if that person is actually good for I'm not going to say yes or no. If she has made the decision, I'll make sure the decision, I'm going to stand by it. And as long as it matters about the wedding, I'll make sure it's one of the best weddings she goes through. And I'll also make sure that after the marriage, we are always so close enough that, if she can share with us anything.
Right. Well, on the flip side of that coin, and I guess this would be the follow up to that. Obviously, she's growing up in India. She's, needless to say, daily exposed to Indian culture. It's not inconceivable that she would come to you and say, hey, Dad, my preference is that you find me a husband. Would you, in turn, take a traditional search method and look to find her a good husband?
Uh, I Uh, that's a tricky one. I would give it a go, but to be really honest, when I was looking for a wife, my dad told me that don't get married to someone we select for you, because at the end of the day, you are responsible for each other. So if she comes to me with a question that like, can you select? Of course, I will. I will definitely look out for someone who is good enough, but again, my first preference is going to be that she can, she goes out and find out who's good for her, and then we can, as a parents, can jump in.
Awesome. Well, Mervyn, I can't thank you enough for sharing with me the insights that you have, for allowing our audience to sneak a peek into fatherhood from the cultural perspective of India. It has really been a pleasure, and thank you so much for being on Dadography.
Thank you so much, Corey. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of your podcast, because this is something different that you're doing, and I'm a big fan of this.
Thank you, Mervyn. Today's fatherhood insight comes from a conversation with a dad from India named Mervyn Fernandes. He gave, among others, 2 valuable tips. Firstly, family values and respect should be an integral part of grooming your child. One way to do this is through family dinner time. Secondly, pay close attention to your child's interests and natural abilities. Develop ways that nurture those interests, creating a learning environment they love. Doing so will also be great for the development of their brain. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Dadography podcast. Thanks very much for listening. I would, however, like to invite you to be a part of the show. Visit our website at dadography.net. Scroll down to the bottom of the page, click on the microphone, tell us your name, where you're from, and what fatherhood means to you. Remember, it takes more than DNA to be a dad.